Greetings and welcome to the Dr. J Vlog series. It is Friday, October 3rd, 2025, and on Fridays we talk about human behavior and justifications. This week we've been talking about the notion of genius, different kinds of geniuses, and what constitutes genius, and so on. So today's question is, are you a genius? Perhaps you are. You're probably aware, though, that there are different sorts of geniuses out there, right? From the artistic to the musical, the mathematical to the scientific, to the literary, to the emotionally intelligent genius, and much more. So there's no consensus, but in terms of intelligence, there's an artificial cutoff that many people have placed at around 140 for the standard IQ test. That is to say, if you're above 140, you might be considered a genius by this particular metric. That's almost 3 standard deviations above the mean. So no one knows for sure exactly how the population's distributed these days, but we could provide an educated guess that that's probably about 1%, 1 in 100 people in the general population. So you'd be truly exceptional if you're above 140 and you're in the top 1%. So now, how do you know if you're a genius then? How do you spot a genius? It can be difficult, but I'm going to just share with you today kind of a top 10 list of behaviors that geniuses often display. So as I go through this, think to yourself, are you like this? Is this characteristic of your behavior, your approach, and so on? So if you have most or kind of all of these behavioral dispositions, then you just might be a genius. So first would be a different way of thinking. That's probably to be expected, right? That is what sets the true genius apart from everyone else would be their more inquisitive and innovative and creative mindset, and a kind of relentless desire to constantly learn and absorb new knowledge. They're constantly pushing the boundaries, trying to uncover new ideas, learn new ideas. They're rarely bored because they're always thinking, and they're always working on different projects in their minds. They're always trying to develop their expertise. And so in that sense, their minds empower and drive them sort of challenge conventional thinking and to challenge the status quo. And that can actually be unpopular at times, but they tend to approach problems from a more dynamic and unconventional angles. They like to analytically break down complex problems, and this often leads to these kind of groundbreaking and innovative solutions. So if that's you, great. But regardless, if you're genius or not, these are probably good traits to develop. It's also well documented that Mozart and Da Vinci and other geniuses will ensure that they have a certain amount of time each day to do nothing other than to just be, okay? Clear their minds, allow them to develop their thoughts and their creativity in different ways, and sort of, to do that deeper thinking that's required. And again, that's probably great advice for all of us. Set aside some time each day just to think. A third quality or characteristic would be curiosity. Geniuses have this sort of, as I mentioned a moment ago, unquenchable thirst for knowledge and to solve problems. They may be avid readers, but not necessarily, not always. But they want to know what other people are doing and thinking. They want to know about their peers in other fields. What are they researching? What are they creating? And they're often driven to ask people about what they're doing and their questions, and looking for answers that are novel and different, and again, sort of out of the mainstream. And indeed, that's one of the key sort of, if you're talking to somebody and they're constantly asking you thought-provoking questions, I mean, it doesn't matter, you don't have to be a genius yourself, but if they're just genuinely curious and they're always asking you provocative questions, generally trying to push the boundaries of what they know and to understand better through their conversations, then that's a key indicator. Okay, as Albert Einstein famously said, "I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious." So yeah, that's a great one to have. There's often a fourth characteristic. There's often a certain calmness that many geniuses possess, kind of that quiet voice of reason, displaying calm in the face of challenges and difficulties. That is, their preference tends to be that of clearing their minds to have more focus and better thought processes, and then to strategically be able to make difficult decisions. Now, that can be a bit deceptive at times, because they can also be a bit explosive with others if others are unable to grasp the logic or see the obvious answer to the question that they're proposing or whatever, despite repeated attempts and so on. So there is that risk in that sense too. So generally calm, but certainly some have the capacity then to explode in frustration at times too. Another behavioral tendency is they're generally unafraid to take risks. So geniuses are, going to take risks. They're willing to, to go for it, to embrace failure, and to understand it, and then to learn from their mistakes, right? That is, their mistakes are not failures with a capital F. They're just opportunities to get new information, for growth, and to hopefully open doors to greater opportunities, if you will. And they're not averse to approval, but they're usually generally more driven by the need to solve the problem or finish the creative project. So their ambition in that sense goes beyond society's approval or societal norms. The reward for excellence is often that they just want to continue to be able to do what they're doing, to have more opportunities, push the boundaries. And again, it's kind of a deep self-belief or a belief in the power of what they're trying to accomplish over the long run. And then related to that then is this notion that work becomes their passion. So genius enjoy being at work if they're the right place, the right culture, the right conditions. They also might be interested in being with or associated with people in other fields who are also at the highest level, so to speak, because they want to learn stuff that they didn't know. They want to become more enlightened accordingly. But the bottom line is their work is that's their passion. It's in fact, it might even be the if not the totality, the large proportion of their social life. And again, this it might be the case then that geniuses don't have as balanced a life in that sense either. Okay, they may find it difficult to make personal connections, or they may become somewhat isolated and lonely in that sense. But the point is that work isn't just something that one does for X number of hours per week. For them, work, that's life. And along those lines too, it's the ability to hyper-focus. Geniuses often excel at this intense ability to focus, immersing themselves in tasks that they're passionate about, and sometimes for prolonged periods. They might even end up losing, sleep and other basic necessities. They don't necessarily always take care of themselves because they're so devoted to achieving their goals. So in other words, you can lose track of your time. You're so driven by your pursuits and your sort of unquenchable thirst to achieve some outcome, to understand more. And of course, this kind of concentration allows them to develop a deeper grasp of complex issues and absorb new ideas. And so, but again, there's a downside because their minds are constantly abuzz with new ideas. This, which is great because it leads to these eureka moments and the process of discovery, etc. The problem is if there's no off switch there, and some people have such a machine-like approach, but they lack the off switch to sort of literally just turn things off for the evening, or to go to sleep or whatever. And the downside is then that can lead to mental and physical exhaustion and health issues, quite frankly. Okay, and then a lot of geniuses have exceptional memories. Not all, but they have this ability then to both store and simultaneously then retrieve huge amounts of information. And so a powerful recall is extraordinarily helpful in terms of being able to make connections, being able to build upon previous ideas or existing knowledge. And quite literally, they're making more neural connections as they're engaged in whatever the task that they're involved in. Because, if you think about it, with respect to short-term memories, the more you learn, the bigger your hippocampus. And a genius is going to unconsciously seek more information, and as such will be exercising their memory circuits as well. So usually a good recall and this broad range of information that you're able to call up at a moment's notice is probably a reflection of some kind of genius. And then there's the ability to adapt. This probably won't surprise anyone, but the ability to think with breadth and depth and flexibility allows geniuses then to learn and adjust quickly and effectively faced with unfamiliar settings, with difficult challenges, and so on. And higher levels of intelligence often show in individuals who can then modify their behaviors to cope successfully with their surroundings, perhaps out of necessity, but nonetheless. And usually that mental flexibility and that willingness to stay open-minded and modify their thinking sometimes fuels incredible discoveries and inventions and so on, creations of various kinds. And then finally, they may be impatient with other people's lack of desire or their inefficiency, because geniuses have such high expectations, often for themselves and then often for others as well. So they're highly devoted to achieving great things. This passion for achievement pushes them to give 100%, no matter what the project, no matter what the task. Rarely would they make mistakes, they'll make mistakes, but rarely will they make excuses for their setbacks. Okay, most instead display this incredible drive to achieve, to finish their projects, to reap the benefits of their labors. Even if they fail, it's still a success, because, if they've given their wholehearted effort, if they've tried their best, then yeah, there can be disappointment. But ideally, the point is to learn from that failure and then to move on to the next challenge. So yeah, you don't dwell on the failure. You pick yourself up if you're a genius, and you're going to continually push forward and say, okay, well, what next? What next? So these are some of the things then that you can look for in yourself and in others to help identify genius. So are you a genius? Okay. If you tend to think differently than most people you know, if you like setting aside time to think each day, if you're endlessly curious, if you're calm generally in thinking about problems, if you're not unafraid to take some risks along the way, if your work is your passion, if you have the ability to be hyper-focused, and if you have an exceptional memory, if you're flexible and adaptive, and if you're driven to achieve in whatever your particular fields of interest, you're probably a genius. All right, until next time, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives, nurture love in your hearts, and dole out hugs in abundance. Peace.